Now, before we jump into chatting with my first guest, a little bit of background about me and why I'm doing this podcast. So these days I'm a mum living on the northern beaches in Sydney, and I describe myself as an entrepreneur with many hats. So what I absolutely love and adore is inspiring, educating and guiding others to achieve success and build a life they desire by their own design. I was an elite athlete for 22 years, which included 3 Olympics, a gold medal in my hometown during the Sydney Games, and a bronze in the 96 Games in my sport of beach volleyball. I retired after having my son in 2006, so it's been quite a while since I've stepped off the sand. Personally, I've had a smooth and really rewarding transition from sport into the real world, and I'd love to now help more athletes experience what I've experienced, which is why I've started this podcast. After I retired, I did heaps of things. I've coached in my sport, I've mentored other athletes, I did and I still do loads of corporate motivational speaking, and I've always loved inspiring others with the tales from my sporting journey. I even wrote a book called The Business of Being an Athlete, so I definitely know what it's like to be an entrepreneur, hustling day in and day out, always on the lookout for the next opportunity and really working hard, just like I did in sport. I knew I never wanted to end up behind a desk though, doing a 9-to-5 and being enslaved to a boss and trading my time for money, because at some stage I knew my time would run out and so would the money. And to tell you the truth, I didn't want a job to tell me how much I was worth or to have a ceiling on my income, because I'm way too creative and too competitive and independent for that. So my passion for coaching, helping and inspiring others is really strong, and it's now my mission to laser focus my attention on you guys. If you're a current athlete, if you're close to retiring, or if you're well and truly retired, I want to bring you interviews with retired athletes from around the world to inspire, educate and motivate you to believe that you can win too after sport. So I'm super excited about today's podcast because I have the pleasure of introducing and welcoming my first ever guest, and I wanted to save this guest for my first podcast, and that is my gold medal winning partner from the Sydney 2000 Olympics, Natalie Cook. Welcome, Nat.
Woo! Wow, what a great intro of yourself, Kerri, too, because that I could not have said that better. You have just inspired me to so many great things. And not only do we do great things together, but because of how you are and how you were with me as a volleyball partner, I have gone and done some amazing things. So thank you for the inspiration and you just getting started.
Oh, you're lovely. Thanks, Nat. Well, I've had this idea about doing a podcast for some time because I really love the idea of athletes transitioning, into a great new life. And we hear a lot about athletes struggling and it's really hard and all that sort of stuff. And I think back to when I retired and no one told me it was going to be hard. No one said, oh, it's really hard. You need to plan for retirement, blah, blah, blah. I just kind of went with the flow and I did it. I didn't have those perceived ideas in my head. So what I want to do is bring on this podcast really successful athletes who have transitioned really well into a new life after, many years in sport, and just bring the positivity about life after sport and make it seem not make it seem, but really draw out, how amazing it is, because, we learned so much, didn't we, in our life, during our sporting careers. So to kick us off, I'd love you to just share a little bit about your upbringing and how you got involved in sport, and then we'll jump into the retirement part.
Well, I was born in Townsville, which is far north Queensland. And for anyone that knows that area, it's very tropical, it's very hot, which means everyone has to swim. So I started as a swimmer in sport, and partly because my mum was an infant swim teacher. So she, of course, taught me when I was young, and I went on to squad training for a club in Townsville. And because it was hot, we wanted to swim all the time. Little did I know that going up and down that black line was going to end up to be quite boring. But it did create a lot of discipline and getting up at early hours of the morning, and really got me focused on wanting to be a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete. So that was inspired by watching Lisa Curry, who's one of our famous Aussie athletes, win a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. So I started in swimming. My dad was a professional, semi-professional soccer player. So sport was in the genes, so to speak. And then my love of sport, I just played everything, you know, in PE at school, I tried everything. And then we moved to Brisbane with Dad's work, and that's where the transition of sports moved to volleyball.
And I know that your great story about how did you get involved with volleyball, it was because you saw something on a notice board at school?
Yeah, well, I was in transition, literally. I mean, we transition in all parts of our life, and life during sport, life after sport. I'm sure there's many athletes that started in one sport and went to another. I was in swimming and I got sick of the black line and didn't like moving from Townsville to Brisbane, didn't like the new pool environment and the school situation set up when I was at high school. So I played every other sport there was. And you might not even know the names of some of these sports, but I played taekwondo, golf, BMX, skateboarding, a sport called Vigoro. I did netball, I did basketball, I did athletics. I tried everything so that the PE teacher would like me. And I was good at everything. And then there was a notice on the school notice board, the sports notice board, that said volleyball trip to Canada and America. And so at the age of 14, I said, what's volleyball? And that's really how it started, so that I could go to America and go to Disneyland and travel. And fortunately on that trip, I fell in love with both traveling and the sport of volleyball.
Well, I so love that story because so many of us athletes, we have that story, that moment when we kind of were introduced to our sport, and they're all so different. Like I stumbled upon volleyball by accident. My brother just asked me to fill in one night because he only had 5 players. He said, come and stand on the court. He said, when the whistle blows, get off the court out of the way so we can play each point. And that's how I was introduced, you know, by accident. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Well, let's obviously just before we go into retirement, giving you a little bit of background. I only played 3 Olympics. You played 5 Olympics. So you left me when I had my first retirement and went on and played with another couple of partners. Tell us just a brief synopsis of that, because sometimes I like to explain that sometimes we go to Olympics to win a medal, or sometimes we go to win the gold medal, you know, if we're already up the top there and we've developed that belief. And then sometimes we just go to qualify. So tell us a little bit of like 96, 2000, 2004, 208 and 212. Like one sentence.
We've had one sentence. That's right, because we haven't got that long. But, you know, 96 was when we first started together, and it was our first Olympics. So exciting. And we were really underdogs. And we took on the great nations of Brazil and America. And for us to get on the podium there was very, very special. But what it did for me and I guess us as a team was realize that we were pretty good at this. And so if we changed a few things, if we really reflected and upped our game, that maybe we could win in our home country of Australia and on Bondi Beach in your hometown of Sydney. So going into Sydney then, and again, a little bit of the underdogs, but knowing that we had the whole country on our side, and of course we'd split up. So we talk about transitions. Kerri and I actually split up for a year and a half in that process to go and work on ourselves. Well, Kerri sent me away to work on myself because she was pretty good. So Kerri was 10 years older than me, still is. Now I have to put that out there purely because that's why you retired early, earlier than me. So sometimes age gets on top of us for sports that require so much jumping and diving and all of that. But I'm trying to hurry this in because it's a five Olympics. But to win in Sydney in front of a home crowd was just the most special, amazing feeling. So got the bronze, then the high of all highs, then change partners. So another transition, go into Athens with a torn rotator cuff in my shoulder, and we finished 4th. So out of the medals, devastating. I always say when I speak that 4th is almost as bad as coming last, because you are so close and you can smell the medals, and that's devastating. When you come last, you go the party's early. So and then change partners again for Beijing and finish 5th. So I could feel the slide coming. But even in both of those Olympics, thought we had a shot at a medal. But London, as my 5th Olympics, was probably the first time where the gold medal for me was qualifying and making the team and getting the tracksuit and enjoying the journey and the experience there. And we weren't really, in it with a chance for the medal. So it was quite almost a high, a drop, an injury, a bump in the road, and then, like in golf, we call it a wash. So just Google golf and a wash and you'll know what that means. It really means it didn't do very good.
Yeah, I always say, because my third Olympics, so I retired after Sydney, as you said, and then by the time I came back again, because I'm one of those athletes that retired and then went, oh, what am I going to do now? So I went and played again. But by that time, you were already hooked up with another partner, too late to come back with you. So my third Olympics was the same, going in for just to qualify. And sometimes I call that just going for the tracksuit, but still a pretty good achievement. So you've been through all of that. That's so amazing. When was it that you decided to retire? Did you think that you would retire before your fifth Olympics, or did you really plan it that you would play that fifth Olympics, get that particular accolade? Because there's not many athletes in Australia that have played that, or around the world that have played in 5 Olympics or more. Did you decide that you, like very early on, that you would go that far and then retire after, or did you have kind of iffy thoughts before that?
Yeah, well, after Beijing, that was my 4th Olympics, and coming 5th, I thought Tamsin and I had a shot. What I probably didn't think was another 4 years. So as you do get older in our sport, it's not 1 year older. It's like every year becomes 2 years, and it goes downhill. Well, for me, it went downhill quite fast. So I took a year off after Beijing with the full intention to release my mind emotionally, and I think as Olympic athletes, the pressure is not just physically or mentally, but there's another layer of emotional pressure as well. So I really gave myself 2009 off. And then what happened, my partner Sarah and I went to Vancouver, the Winter Olympics. I'd never been to a Winter Olympics as a spectator. And I sat in February 2010, and I was going to make my decision after that, whether I would go on to London. Sat in the stand as a spectator, and I just got goosebumps watching the Australian team march out. And I thought, I've only got in my life one more shot at this, and if I want it, I've got to go now. And so that was clear for me. Having that experience was, I've got to go now. I want to do this, and I'm going to go to my 5th Olympics and get that accolade. Like you said, there's not many, and most women don't go on to more than 3, sometimes 4 Olympics because of prize money and children. Like you had Tyson 2006, and I just was in a position where I could go for one more. And believe me, the toughest year of my life competing was 2010 and 11, because I'd come from a year off and the rest of the world hadn't. And so first of all, you have to recover, and then you got to get on to play with all the new guns that had come out. So it was very tough, and I questioned myself many times. But I had a plan that after 2012 that it would be over.
Yeah, awesome. So just hearing that, I didn't realize, thinking back there, we kind of spent some time where we didn't talk a lot, and didn't really realize that had happened with you, Nat, that you got inspired in Vancouver, and that how hard it was coming back. And that's exactly what happened to me, isn't it? Because when I retired in 2001, and then I had that year off, and then I decided to come back, it was hard as. So for those of you who are thinking of retiring and thinking maybe I'll come back later, just know that it is hard, but it's all part of it, isn't it? We're conditioned and used to battling. We're hustlers, we battle, we fight, we're competitive. But once you become an Olympian, and I know there's probably other athletes listening to this, but being an Olympian, it's just like being part of a family. And I know the goosebumpy feeling. I know I have that every time. And I've been lucky enough to commentate you on 2 occasions. So in the 2008 and 2012 Olympics. And bloody hell, I felt like I was out on the court with you, although I had to keep it cool and talk about the game, knowing that you'd probably listen to it later. So I always had that in my head. Oh my God, I can't say that because she's going to kill me. She's going to punch me. So when you retired, what was your plan? Did you plan it early? did you plan what you were going to do, or were you just so focused on getting to your last Olympics that you thought, okay, when I finish, I'll think about it then? Did you have something in mind? What did you do?
Yeah, well, you talked about it in the introduction about entrepreneurialism, and both of us had an amazing entrepreneurial spirit. And because we grew up in a sport that wasn't as high profile, like when I first started playing, and I'm sure when you started, Kerri, it was even worse, but we would win a water bottle and a hat when we won our beach volleyball tournament. So there wasn't much of a financial career. And that's why my dad didn't want me to play beach volleyball. He's like, what are you doing that for? There's no future in it. Why don't you go to university and finish your degree first so that you have something to fall back on? And, you know, it clearly made logical sense 25, 30 years ago for that. But emotionally, I was going to the Olympics. So I was like, get out of the way, Dad. But because of that, it made us hunt our money. We had to find sponsors. We had to do fundraising. We had to look for grants. I clearly remember you being chief editor of our newsletter that went out every month. And Kerri would gather the newspaper articles and photocopy them and write the story and get our pictures. And we would send it out to current sponsors and prospective sponsors so that we could try and gather some money. Because traveling around the world, trying to play beach volleyball wasn't that lucrative. So because of all that, it meant that I had a mindset of, I need to find something else. I need to, not a job, never ever wanted a job, had to find something that was going to create a lot of leverage, a lot of money at once. How could we do one thing and make a lot of money? Because we were clearly having to train hard, and that was physically and emotionally exhausting. So I did a lot of the corporate speaking with you, and I think, you know, you and I went to the same course post Atlanta. We did a 3-day course on how to do a public speaking, how to put together a presentation. And then you and I have lived off it for the last 25 years. So it's really been sensational. And I know that that's something now, after 25 years of telling our own story, that's what you want to do, help other athletes also extract their stories so that they can create a living, because it's quite lucrative to be an amazing corporate public speaker. So that's something I did. And I thought, okay, I had this wonderful plan at retirement, which this was your question. So a lot of that lead up to be a public speaker, a corporate speaker. And also I had a business called Sandstorm that was a beach volleyball business, and because that's what we knew. And I convinced the government to build a $2 million facility in Brisbane. I would train in the facility, which I did for Beijing and London. And I would also encourage beginners or people that wanted lessons to come and play as well. And that is what I thought would make me my millions, right? It was more headache than it was worth. You know, traditional business, you have to worry about staff, you have to worry about product, stocking the fridges with drinks and chips and all those, you know, horrible things that kids want to eat, ice creams, and also income, you know, marketing and all those things I had to learn about, accounting and taxation and PAYG tax for the staff. It just like, I'm going to pull my hair out. So I was doing that while I was trying to go to my last 2 Olympics, and but it didn't work. So my best day, that's what I was going to do though. I was going to do Sandstorm, and I was going to be a motivational speaker. And I'd written a book after our Sydney Olympic win, and I thought I could keep selling my book. That'd be good. $10 a book. Let's see if we can make lots of money. The calculations weren't quite adding up to my millions that I thought I might get. That there's this perception in the world that Olympic gold medalists might all have, right? It's not the case. You hear of, you know, Michael Phelps and Roger Federer, and you hear those top tier, which is 0.001% of the Olympic athletes. And then there's the rest of us that either struggle in our entrepreneurialism or try and get jobs and live a future, you know, but the best life we can after retirement. So I had this best laid plan, and the corporate speaking went well. Sandstorm I sold. And then a friend of mine from university called me one day and said, well, this is what's embarrassing, because the other thing that happens when you retire, I don't know if it's happening to anyone listening, but what happened to me was I kept eating the way that I used to eat when I competed. So as you can imagine, and I was on video then. So what I did was puff up my face, like I went like a puffer fish, and I put on a lot of weight really quickly. And my best friend from university called me and said, "You're fat." And I went, "What?" She said, "You're fat, and if you don't change what you're doing, you'll end up fatter." Really was the intention. So she got me involved in this nutritional system of products that I was very skeptical about, but I took them, I lost all this weight, and it happened to be an amazing network marketing business as well. That has seemed to be the future path for my retirement. And now all I do, fortunately also what it did was it brought me, you said we didn't talk much, but it brought us back together. And now you and I get to build teams of amazing people that want to help impact the world's health. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and get to travel around the world together. And like, just so we can put this in context, right now I'm sitting in Sydney and you're in Canada, where you first went for your first ever volleyball trip. Your partner's Canadian. That's why you're there visiting family. But you've been living in Switzerland for a year as well. So obviously, all those entrepreneurial hats, just like we're both the same in that sense. But all those things that we did back then have really obviously compounded with our business now to help you create a life that you've really designed for yourself, and a residual income which comes in every week regardless of where you are or what you're doing. So for both of us, so we're extremely lucky. And I know how grateful I am that you persisted with me, because when you started telling me about it, I was super skeptical, and it took me a year and a half to join you. But in that year and a half, I had to develop my own belief. I had to kind of change some preconceived ideas that I'd had about, the industry, and I had to look into all the ingredients and look into the science. And I remember you and Sarah laughing at me because I'd go to all the science talks, but it was important to me, as it would have been for you guys as well. So that's so cool. So let's go. That's all the great stuff, which I really want to highlight. And I really want to let athletes know how amazing it is, how many opportunities there are after sport. And the other thing, because we do a lot of corporate speaking, and we meet a lot of corporates. We go to so many different businesses, and we meet them and we learn about their industries. And the one thing that they always say to me is how great it is to have an athlete on their staff as well. Because sometimes when we transition, we forget about the great skills that we've learned as an athlete, and how they can, transition into any job. Look, you don't have to be an entrepreneur, but if you want to, work in a certain industry, you have so many amazing skills. So I just wanted to bring that in. But let's kind of talk about some of the hard stuff. So were there some things that you really struggled with when you first retired? Like, did you feel like you'd lost an identity? Do you feel like you still have that identity? How does that kind of feel for you, since being an athlete, an Olympian? We're still Olympians, we'll always be Olympians, but being, really closely involved with the Olympics for 20 years for you.
Yeah, I mean, our motto is once an Olympian, always an Olympian. And I'm on the board of the World Olympians Association, helping the 100,000 Olympians in that transition process, and how we can continue to develop our identity after sport. Now, it's been almost 7 years since I retired, and I still, when I go back into Australia in a few weeks, it says occupation on my card, and I will still write athlete. So I am an athlete at heart. I am, it's not that I'm currently competing as an athlete, but that's absolutely my identity. It was for a very long time, probably from the age of 8. I was an athlete. I was swimming. I was more excited about sport than school, and all the way through, I still feel like I've got an athlete mindset. So I then had to build. So it's not about sort of getting rid of that identity, or this is my belief anyway. It's about building another one. It's about having, for our young athletes today, it's about making sure they have one that they're traveling parallel to their athletic identity. And it doesn't mean they have to go at that 100%. They just start building a second identity. And that for me was entrepreneurialism. And I am a corporate speaker, I'm a network marketer, I'm an entrepreneur. So the words I am are very powerful. So that's what I had to do. But there were days where I woke up wondering, very lost, wondering if I was doing the right thing, because now I have a family to support. I have a little girl, Jordan, and is there enough money coming in? Is there going to be in the future? Because I've never had a job with a set income, and I've always had to create my own. And then, Sarah and and Jordan have just been in Switzerland for 12 months, enjoying the work that we put in post-retirement. We get to celebrate that with our family. But absolutely, I am a little bit afraid to go back to Australia, wondering what I'm going to do, and will it all work? And does everyone remember me? All of those things.
Yeah, that's a good one. Does everyone remember me? But I love how you talked about the fact that it is still your identity. And I think some athletes sometimes think that because of, again, what people around us are putting in our ears, that, retiring is difficult and you'll struggle and you'll lose your identity. Don't lose your identity. Exactly what you said. My identity is an athlete. Why can't you still have that identity in your head for the rest of your life, but just add on to it? Exactly like you said. I absolutely love that. And I absolutely know that when you come back to Australia, it'll be like you've never gone. You'll just be like, oh, hey, oh, where have you been? Oh, Switzerland. A year? Yeah. So I don't think there'll be any, but I understand that always that fear and that, I don't know, because we are very forward thinking. We were in a sport because we're always planning 4 years ahead to the next Olympics or the next world champs or whatever. So we're very forward thinking. So, I do see that. And I guess that is a struggle of being an entrepreneur and not having a full-time job. One of the main things is always kind of thinking, okay, what's next? But for me, that's a kind of exciting thing too, right?
Yeah. And it's also, as you talked about, it's also a skill. It's a transferable skill. The fact that we can see so far ahead, we can plan so far ahead, and we can take action on things that are going to lead us to goals and dreams 4 years in advance without seeing the reward now is an amazing skill. And in the corporate world, they call them soft skills. I mean, as athletes, we have so many soft skills: our discipline, our determination, our tenacity, our planning, our composure under pressure, our ability to make decisions under pressure. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about discovering what another passion is. From coaching, it could be completely different. It could be from coaching to commentary, but all the way through, you could do something completely different. I've got kayakers, friends that are real estate agents. I've got swimmers that are plumbers. All of these, you can absolutely do whatever it is your heart desires. And the sad or the hardest part, it's not really sad, the hardest part I find for some of my friends in that are Olympians is they feel like they've got to go back to the beginning. So if you can get rid of that feeling, it's not about going back to the beginning. You're starting way higher than anyone else coming into a profession, and give yourself that confidence and back yourself in. All you got to do is learn a few technical strategies and skills. And there are people that help you do that. So amazing. Hold that self-confidence and make the next dream in your life come true.
Love it, Nat. Love it. We can't finish there though, because I've got a couple more questions. That would have been a great time to finish. But I've just got a couple more. I've got a really important question. Was there anyone in your life, anyone special that really helped you prepare for life after sport, that really kind of got you thinking and built your belief, I guess, in the fact that you were going to be great? You were going to be following your passions and continuing to succeed after sport?
Well, I think that came from our coach, Steve Anderson, that I had for most of my 4 out of 5 of my Olympics. And whether he did it on purpose or not, he would tell us he did it on purpose. But he was, through his coaching of me and us in volleyball, he was building us as people, not just as volleyball players. He was really layering in. He would use words like legacy. He would use words like, who are you inspiring and what are you going to do after you win your gold medal? Before we won it, like, what are you going to do with this after you win? And that's where the reflection and forward thinking came to, okay, well, I'm going to inspire. The way I was inspired by Lisa Curry swimming, I want to inspire the next generation of not only beach volleyball players, but athletes. So ironically, Kerri's partner in Athens was my best friend's sister, Summer Lockowitz, who played beach volleyball because she saw me play in Atlanta. And so they are the types of things that help build a legacy and help lay the foundation for the future success or my future identity. And it all comes down to Steve. He was just amazing at that. And like I said, whether he knew he was doing it or not, it was very, very powerful. And he built my character as a person that enabled me to have success after sport.
Love that.
As you talk about, like, deliberately create and deliberately design it, and then go about making it happen. Wait for reality to catch up. Now, often actually, it doesn't go to plan. And our resilience skills as athletes help us bounce back. And we really, the other thing we learned was building a team around us of people that are going to support us, and not only support us and high five us when we're winning, because that's really easy, but who in your life and your team after sport are going to support you when you're losing and when you're not having the success. And that is the most important part of your life after sport.
Yeah, beautiful. And, I was lucky enough to have Steve for 2 Olympics, and completely impacted my life exactly like you said. I learned so much more in those 2 Olympics than the 10 years of indoor volleyball that I'd played before with different coaches. He to me and to you would have to be the number one coach in the world. 2 last questions. 1, what was your biggest mistake in your life after sport that you've made? Share that with us just quickly. And what's your biggest win?
Okay, well, lucky you said life after sport, because I would have said my biggest mistake was not playing with you in Athens. I should have played with you in Athens. But my biggest mistake after sport was, that's a good question. See, I've been trained to not think they're mistakes. They're just pivots, right? And my brain really can't go there because it doesn't feel like a mistake. But what I probably would have liked to have done is gain more knowledge and immerse myself a bit more. Like, most of my knowledge is street knowledge. It's about negotiating and connecting and networking and speaking and storytelling and engaging people and being friendly. And it's all street stuff. But I probably should have gone and got some technical knowledge, whether that's about entrepreneurialism or about business with my traditional business, because the way I learned my traditional business was through all the mistakes. So that was probably it. And my biggest win, did you say? Is that biggest?
Yep.
My biggest win has been spending the last 14 months in Switzerland with my amazing wife, Sarah, and my beautiful daughter, Jordan, because we had huge success in our network marketing and the work we did for the 3 or 4 years when I retired. So that work, as you said, we got residual income and were able to work a little bit from Switzerland for 12 months. So that's been my hugest win. It's just so cool. And now I go back to Australia, build more with my team, and we'll go and do it again in 3 or 4 years.
Yay! I'll come with you this time. Woo!
Yay! Woo!
Hey, Nat, thank you so much for sharing all that. I really think anyone listening to this who is an current athlete or a retired athlete or thinking about retiring would have gained so much. I loved hearing your stories. There were things there that I'd never heard before, so it's so cool. Really appreciate you. Love you like a sister. Hate you like a sister sometimes. No, love you like a sister.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me as the first ever guest. What you're doing here for the community of athletes and their life after sport is priceless. There's not enough of it. And your commitment to other people's success and the impact you have on others is just honorable and inspiring. And I'm so glad that even though you hate me like a sister, that we're mates.
Oh gosh, we've had some great times. We've had some great times. Thanks so much, Nat, and thank you everyone for joining in. Keep a lookout for our next guest, who will be a surprise because I don't even know who that's going to be yet.
Awesome.
Over and out. See you guys.
Bye.
Oh.